They're dead, Dave.
What, Captain Hollister?
Everybody's dead, Dave.
What, Todd Hunter? What, Selby? Not Jen.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead. Everybody is dead, Dave.
Hello everybody, welcome to Everybody is Dead Dave, the show where one long-term fan of Red Dwarf and one person experiencing it for the very first time work their way through every episode of the Space Set sitcom. That long-term fan is me, Phil Hawkins, and the newbie to each episode is always Adam.
That's me. Hello, fresh newbie. Still working. I consider myself a fan now, but still technically a newbie. There's a lot I need to see, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
And we sometimes like to invite an extra voice onto the show as a guest reviewer, because, you know, it's always nice to spice things up a bit, and what spices things up more than a threesome? That's a threesome for the purposes of talking about science fiction comedy programs, nothing else.
Yes, we keep it clean on this show, or relatively.
So our third this week is none other than pop culture YouTuber, the Doctor Who broke canon master himself, Mr. Davis.
Hello boys, watching some sci-fi, I see.
Indeed. Hello,
yes.
sir.
As per.
What's your experience of Red Dwarf before we asked you to come on this podcast? Because we have a mixture of people as guest reviewers. They're not always people that have watched it for years. Some people have watched it a little bit. Some people have watched it not at all. Where do you fit in?
I'm definitely more on Adam's side of the camp. I'm no stranger to episode-by-episode review podcasts, but this is the blindest I've ever gone in. This is the first full episode I've ever watched.
Okay, so you've never seen a single full episode before you watch this one. You've seen clips?
I thought I had seen clips, but now I'm questioning even that. I think I had just seen adverts, or maybe like a sofa commercial or something.
Yeah.
That's true. They've been in a commercial recently, actually. I think, was it for AA Breakdown cover or something like that? I think they did where Starbug breaks down and the AA comes out and helps them fix it.
I'm the expert of that. I know that pretty well. But it's all new territory for me.
Well, hopefully, if you have any continuity questions as we go through this episode, hopefully one of us should be able to fill you in. I mean,
the main one thing you need to remember with Red Dwarf and continuity is that it ignores its own continuity on a weekly basis, even more so than Doctor Who. So
yeah.
I was about to say, it really didn't strike me as a show with a mythos.
No,
yeah,
I mean, it does have these random things.
Yeah, sometimes it'll remember the most obscure point, and it's like, yes, this is our lore, but then one of the biggest plot shifts in an episode, the next week they'll be like, yeah, that happened, and we'll just forget about it now.
Right.
So,
and
yeah.
I think when it comes to sci-fi and the obsession with lore, comedy shows, and Doctor Who is included in that, really gets away with being nudge nudge wink wink, you know?
Yeah,
we're being cheeky. We're being cheeky. So that's always a winner. Always a winner. I made a web series around it, for God's sake.
This week we are up to the Series 6 finale, Out of Time. I'll read the bit of a blurb off of IMDb. Starbug enters a fog in space containing devices that create false realities, where the crew find a time machine, and then they meet themselves 15 years in the future. Wow. This is probably, I would say, the most dramatic a season finale has gotten so far. What do you think, Adam?
I'd agree with that. I mean, for most of the ones so far, these first 6 series, there's maybe been a lot going on in that episode, but they've never really felt like finales. They're truly, I guess, serialized in nature. You know, it's very much its own self. It's not resolving a plot thread. It's very much its self-contained thing. This one's a bit more expansive. Still not definitive, I'd say, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, it definitely feels like the most finale-ish episode we've had so far.
Yeah. We left off last week saying that it felt like a little bit of a cliffhanger because they had done a bit of time travel last week, Sam, and what had happened at the end of the last week was that they had travelled a couple of weeks into their future by accident and found out that something had happened to Lister. And then they hopped away back to their own time. And that was kind of left at that. Which, apparently, when scripted, had absolutely nothing to do with this episode. But does, in fact, end up tying into it quite nicely.
Yeah, as far as finale staging goes, that's pretty
Yeah, but it was
subtle.
just all pure coincidence. Like, they had scripted the episode separately and come up with the story separately, and that was just a throwaway gag at the end. And they actually recorded a bit at the end of the last episode where they think something has happened to Lister because he's not there when they go a few weeks into the future, and then they hop away, and then they recorded a bit where Lister then just comes out of the loo, like nothing was actually wrong with him. And it was only once they'd scripted this episode that they decided, actually, that ties in quite nicely with what the future version of him in this episode is. So let's leave it as a bit of a kind of tying in. But it was just pure coincidence.
It's your kids, Marty. Something's got to be done about your kids.
Yeah,
Just a cliffhanger that doesn't go anywhere, but then does go somewhere. Yeah.
exactly.
How did you find the opening of this? Did you think the comedy was strong in it?
It got as my first glimpse into Red Dwarf. I was so relieved that it was actually sharp and funny. I'm sure.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, like that from the first scene. That's my first bit. I'm sure someone said it already, but dry, sharp, and corny is such a specific combination that it's very Blackadder.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rimmer especially. Rimmer is a Blackadder character doing Rowan Atkinson style delivery.
Do you know what? Now that you say that, like I never thought that, but now that you've said that, I can see it.
Big time.
Absolutely.
And everyone else is Baldrick.
Yeah, just everyone.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. And they are similar in many of their characteristics. Now you say it. Now I think about it, because they're both absolute gits to other people constantly. And yeah, the dry humor and everything. Yeah, that is a good shout.
Being very theatrical and intelligent about being a git is my form of comedy, and us Brits are quite good at it, as it turns out.
We're just a horrible nation, so that's why.
So this episode starts off with Rimmer appointing himself morale officer, which is basically just an excuse for him to vent his concealed frustrations with the rest of the crew that he's been holding in, and literally lets rip into all three of them one at a time.
So good. It's so good. I'm stealing that for my personal life.
You're just going to suggest to your friends around the dinner table, like, hey, let's have a grievance meeting. I'll start.
And I'll close off as well, actually,
Yeah,
every guys.
Yeah. Apparently, he had tried to attack Lister with a fridge.
Yeah,
Previously.
that was a line about trying to insert the fridge into Lister somehow. That provokes quite an image. Yeah, I don't know. This whole I like the insults that he spouted out, but I found like the whole there was parts of the opening segment, for me at least, it took a little while for it to get going for me. Like one recurring joke I have on this, Sam, is I often say, "Oh, there's like a comedy bit, but it goes, in my opinion, it goes on for too long." That's like a recurring joke. And you know, comedy's subjective. Yeah. We've all got different takes on it. And it wasn't that it was too long. There were just bits that were really, like the insults when he's going around the morale meeting. I loved that. But the bits like just before and the bit just after, before we get like the alert that something's happening, were just a bit flatter for me. It's like we're on a flat line, then we shot up during the morale meeting, then we just came right back down. That was for me anyway.
I can see that. I can see that being the thing of this series. But Adam, they've got 30 minutes to fill on one set.
We do acknowledge this. Yeah, on one set. We do acknowledge this as well. Like we do forgive a lot of it, don't we, Phil, for like time constraints and like the nature of the format and things like that. So
I like that aspect of it. I'm guessing it's a show that isn't really known for location shooting.
Yeah, they do.
Not massively. They have ventured out a little bit. Like the first couple of series were all on the ship. They did not leave the ship.
Yeah.
And then they from the third series onwards, they would have a few episodes where they'd go to a different ship. So it's still studio based, but a different set.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they have the occasional location filming. They had a kind of Wild West themed one earlier on this series that obviously was recorded on location in a Wild West looking town. So they do occasionally, but it is very heavy on the recurring sets.
Yeah.
Lockdown viewing.
Yeah.
Lockdown viewing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. One thing I liked about how Rimmer was in this scene is that, as well as it being quite strong comedy, I thought it tied in quite well thematically with what happens with Rimmer right at the end, because it's like the polar opposites. And I'll probably talk more about it when we get towards the end. But because how he acts at the end is so counter to how we're used to him acting that I think it really shows a sort of character growth in him. And I think this scene here is there to emphasize and remind us what he's like most of the time, so that hits again a bit harder later on.
It helps newbies like me out as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Within 3 seconds, you know this guy's a git, straight away.
So
vampire, git, robot, git. Okay, yeah, got
pretty
it.
much.
So the ship enters some kind of stellar fog where they don't know what's going on, what's happening, and Lister is injured. There's a big shaking of the ship. Lister is injured, and they take him to the medical section and start to look into him. And it turns out he's a droid. Crichton realizes he's a droid. And Crichton is very annoyed that he's been serving an earlier model than himself, someone that technically he outranks.
Yeah. And I thought that was great, like Robert Llewellyn, because normally on this show, Crichton is quite, he's very, in a way, polite. He's always willing to serve. We've sort of said there's moments where he comes across as like the C-3PO of the series. Okay. But just to see him flip like this in the presence of we haven't really seen that before, like the flip side of how offensive it is, like you say, Phil, that he's serving, in his mind, a lower rank.
I looked up to you. You encouraged me to break my programming and ape human behavior. Now I find you're no better than I. But worst of all, the most bitter pill to swallow, for 4 long years, I had to hand scrub the gussets of your long johns.
So I thought it was a great chance for Robert Llewellyn to sort of flex his muscles a bit, not just doing the great Crichton's a good servant sort of thing he normally does.
What do you make of Crichton, Sam?
Well, I only just got that it's probably a reference to Michael, right? Michael Crichton, sci-fi writer.
Oh, true.
Maybe.
Yeah, Westworld, like androids. I was just thinking, Crichton discovers an android. Shocker. That's what he did his whole writing career.
Yeah.
But
we'll have to wait for a dinosaur to appear next, because wasn't Michael Crichton Jurassic Park as well?
Oh, listen, there's a whole other podcast for Jurassic Park. We'll save that. But yeah. He's a great cynical little writer, and I like the character. Of course, I've been watching Star Trek Next Generation for the first time recently as well lately. So I was just like, he's Data. He's Data, right? But
Phil's
you're telling
Trekkie,
me,
so he'll have to.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. There's probably crossover there, but he's
on the bar of C-3PO to Data. We're in the middle. Help me out.
I'd say edging towards C-3PO more than thing. He expresses emotions definitely a lot more than Data does.
Got it.
Despite constantly saying that androids shouldn't express emotions, including in this episode, he says that. He shows quite a lot of them, especially here, where he's getting frustrated and annoyed that he was, made to serve someone who was, has been serving someone that ends up being an inferior model.
Yes. He's the cattiest of all of them. And there's a character called Cat as well, and he's even cattier than him.
Yeah, Cat has his moments, but one criticism we've had, I think, throughout when we've done this podcast is sometimes we feel Cat, out of the 4, maybe doesn't get that much material compared to the rest, or he just gets like, here's like, a quirky one-liner that's either like an ego remark or a snide remark, but not much else. Whereas the other 3 tend to get these like character pieces, like you said at the start. Rimmer shows off how much of a git he is. Crichton shows off his cattiness and his resourcefulness. Lister undergoes his whole thing as well. Whereas Cat, well, so far anyway, we haven't seen many episodes where Cat's like the main focus.
Really? You're 6 seasons in?
Yeah. I mean, has there been one where he's been like the number one focus?
I don't know if he. I don't know
like
if he's necessarily been the number one. There have been episodes where he has had a stronger, bigger role, like the Gunman of the Apocalypse one. I think I said in that they focused on him a bit more. He's never been like the main focus, I don't think. But I think this series he has gotten a lot more to do than he has had in previous series, and they're starting to use him a bit more here. So that's quite good.
I just want to ask Sam, sorry, before we carry on with the story. When this revelation happened that, Lister's a robot, considering this is your first episode, did you feel this was leading up to a punchline, or were you just taking this as like, all right, this is what's happening?
I was convinced it was a gaslighting prank. And I thought the entire plot of the episode was a gaslighting prank, even beyond the android bit, until the ship disappears a little bit later. And then I'm like, oh, right, no, this is all legit. Apart from, of course, he is not a robot.
Yes.
Adam, what did you think? What did you? Because obviously you've gone this far in the show, but you haven't seen anything past this. So,
I mean,
did you? Was there even like a little bit of a? Oh, maybe he has been a robot this whole time.
There was a like twinge of it, yeah. Because in my head I was thinking, oh, but this, if they do it well, this could be quite an interesting idea to play with and like run with. But then the longer it went on, part of me was like, no, I know this show by now. This is probably a gag or it's not real. And sure enough, yeah, you know.
And he gets him doing all the sort of menial tasks now because he's. What I don't get is quite why Lister went along with it. Like Lister's
there's
still
no
got
resistance.
his own mind. Like there's literally no resistance.
Yeah, I mean,
he's just like,
yeah.
okay then. Yeah, I'll go.
He's
and
not
make
normally
these
like
sandwiches.
that, very outspoken. Although I've got to say, one of my potential funniest lines was when, you know, they're saying, oh, we've got to tell him, and Crichton's like, I'll do it. And he's like, oh yeah, so, you know, do you remember about your mother and father? He's like, no, I was found in a box under a pool table. And Crichton just says, yeah, but did the box say kit or paint before assembly? I was like, I don't know, man, that creased me up. That was such a good line.
That was good. Crichton often gets some of the best lines
He does.
in this show. Just every week, he seems to get the best lines, and I think a lot of it's down to Robert Llewellyn's delivery because he's and his facial expressions just add to it. He's like later on because he gets him to do these things. He gets him to make sandwiches and tea for everyone. He gets him to give up his cockpit seat, and so Crichton gets to sit at the front. And he even criticizes him when he brings in the things. You call those triangles, and then they realize what's going on, and they've been through a reality pockets. And I just love the look on Crichton's face as it dawns on him that actually he's not a robot, and he's just been really rude to someone he's programming. Tells him that because he's a human, he's meant to serve, and it's just like his guilt and just the facial expressions are brilliant on that.
It is a weirdly dark idea as well. Now, and I know it's not far from the first sci-fi thing to be, wow, you're not really a human at all along. You were Blade Runner man. But yes. Just the really flippant way all of the crew turns on him. And even though it's a small little comedy bit, you're like, oh my God. Yeah. Now, this show does that on occasion. It has these like weird moments that are obviously drenched in comedy, but when you break it down, it's like, this is actually quite a dark concept or quite a horrific concept, but that's been played off lightly.
Yeah, they always do. They always play it off quite well.
Yeah, they hit a few more pockets. So the cat kind of he doesn't disappear for us, the audience, and no one else can see him initially. They're like, "Where's the cat gone?" And then suddenly they start to forget who the cat is. And
gaslighting.
They are gaslighting. I can see why your mind went to gaslighting throughout all this. He's just there going, guys, I'm here. What's going on? And but they pass through that, and then he's back as well. And then, like you say, the ship disappears around them, and they're just in their cockpit seats with no physical ship around them, just floating through space. Very surreal.
Oh, I love the animal heads.
The animal heads.
Because that's classic, like, we're just going to throw in some... I know it's like really lol random humour, but I don't know, it tickled me a little bit.
One for the furries out there.
How dare you expose me this way, Phil?
They come into a plan in the end of how they're going to get through this, because they want to get to... all this fog is protecting something, some kind of derelict in the middle of it all, and they want to get to it to salvage it because they need supplies and things. So Crichton comes up with a plan that he'll put all the organic people into stasis for 3 days, which is how long it's going to take them to get there, and none of this reality altering stuff will seep into the stasis. It's kind of just sort of a nice wave away, kind of like, okay, we're done with all this reality altering stuff. Let's move on to the next bit without having to...
Absolutely, I liked that. I don't know if every episode is like this. I loved that it couldn't sit still. It was so blasé about these big sci-fi plots. You can tell when the episode just gets bored of them. It's like, right, bad bit. Yeah, on the next one, next bit.
Yeah, this joke has run its course. Let's move on to the next concept.
So honest and refreshing. But that's the thing I was wondering with it being sci-fi and it's doing fairly high concept ideas every other second. You never get like stuck in the sci-fi nonsense talk of all of it.
Yeah, like the techno babble or anything
Thank
like that.
you.
It's just
That's the word.
Yeah, I think most time it gets away with it. There was one, I think it was last week, when they were dealing with like wormholes, and like how wormholes work, like how time moves at a certain pace on one side compared to the other, and obviously that concept to people like sci-fi nerds, we get how wormhole. Do you know what I mean? We're more familiar with the concept.
Yeah, these
but
are
we were
tropes.
saying, we were saying though, for a general audience, the explanation it gave, obviously, again, it's working within a 30-minute format. It's got to race along. We thought it did it all right. I think we said, didn't it? Maybe not as clear as I mean, it's hard.
Entirely clear what they were saying. The explanation was,
and they ignored it as well because they're like, oh, when you go through the wormhole, it's going to be like 600 years before we reach it, and then Rimmer's the one who goes through it, and time passes, but then the others arrive in like 5 minutes. It's like, okay, so you've just ignored the principle you've just said. But again, as you said earlier, it gets away with it because it's sci-fi comedy, and it doesn't really care. So
it's jumping from sci-fi trope to sci-fi trope, and I think that's why I could keep up with it so much.
Yeah.
But even if I was a kid, I reckon I'd be pretty into it on a plot level.
Yeah, well, I was 8 when I first saw this, so I was watching this series when it went out for the first time, and I was 8 years old, and I loved it. I loved Red Dwarf at that point. I hadn't seen all of it because I was too young when the series started, but by the point it got to this bit, I was fully hooked. It was great, which I'll come to a frustration with that at the end, but I think Adam might know what I'm going to talk about there, because I have mentioned it before. But so they eventually get to the to this derelict in the middle. It's a Space Corps experimental time travel ship. They find out. Adam, was it just me, or are they reusing a model shot from something? I swear it looked really familiar, but I couldn't place it.
It did. I think it did. I mean, they reused the same model shots in this same episode. Like, there was one shot of Starbug that I noticed they used twice, just like, a panning shot. And like, I think the model is reused from. I couldn't tell if it was maybe like from bits of like the Hollow ship or some other bits like that.
Something like that, isn't it? I'm sure.
It's the BBC. It's on screen.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It's on screen for such a short amount of time, and we don't get to see inside of it. It's another pretty much hand-waved thing. It's like, oh look, there's the derelict. Next scene. Oh, we've gone onto the derelict. We're back again already, and we've got a time machine.
Just like that.
Pretty much
just
it.
like that. Yeah. Simple.
The crew of the time travel machine, we find out apparently died by time traveling to the 20th century and catching influenza, which seems very surreal listening to that now. I mean, almost prophetic.
Who'd have thunk it? Who'd have thunk it? But yes, very odd to watch. There was an episode earlier, Sam, we watched called Quarantine, and you can imagine what we felt like watching that. That was an experience. Very good episode, but yeah, very, very weird when they're talking like, oh, you've got to isolate in this chamber and you can't do anything. And so, yeah, this felt...
Yeah, the show's already about cabin fever, so that's nuts.
True. Yeah.
That strikes me as crazy.
So, obviously, get hold of a time machine. You're going to want to test it out and time travel. So they time travel to the 15th century.
They do.
But it's not a space and time machine. This is no TARDIS. This just puts you exactly where you are, just in a different period of time. So they're in the 15th century in deep space 3 million years away from Earth.
I love that reveal and like how Crichton delivers the line. He's like, "Oh, it's deep space in the 15th century."
It's such an easy, obvious joke when it comes to space and time travel, and it's such a funny one. It's always whenever I see it in sci-fi stuff, I'm like, yeah, it's good. That's good.
That's good stuff. It's not got old yet.
Yeah. So they pretty much give up on that and think it's useless. But then once they return to their own time, they pick up a small craft on their sensors, and it's Starbug. It is Starbug from the future.
Cue the reuse of model shot. So...
Yes. Crichton doesn't want to communicate with them initially, because which is very consistent with his attitude last week when he was very cross with himself for crossing his own time stream and communicate. Like when last week they accidentally travelled in time, like by a couple of weeks, and ended up like
Cowboys?
Well, no, they were just. That was a different episode. That was a virtual reality thing. This was just they were on Starbug, and there was them 2 weeks in the future, and there was other Crichton was like, I can't believe you did this, Crichton. You know how dangerous this is, and so this is very consistent character-wise with that. I thought him being like very much no, we can't interact with them. But he does come up with an interesting plan, which is that he will lock the others away so they don't interact with them. And he will wipe his mind after he's interacted with them. Because they're sending out an SOS, they might need some help. So he just sort of comes up with that plan. And that's what they're going to do.
Flawless.
Again, Philip, you're the expert here. That is directly lifted from Star Trek: The Next Gen, right?
Is it? What the?
There is definitely a time where all the crew have to wipe their memories, and Data has like the big secret, and he can't tell anyone.
That does ring a bell.
And he wipes his memory, or he wipes everyone else's memory. Look, I'm just saying this is a well-trodden ground.
Yeah, I think you might be right. Although I think it's been like a decade or two since I've seen that episode of Star Trek. So,
Adam, I'm not sure it is a coincidence. This is a direct Star Trek rips.
Red Dwarf does like to reference back to other things.
I love it.
No, this came out in 1993, I think. Was when this one came out.
Yes.
Star Trek TNG had been on for a few years then, so it's it's definitely
as one of my lecturers at uni taught me, he says the thing is, he says, in this industry, geniuses steal. He said, and I was like, okay. I was like, morally debatable, but sure. Basically with the idea that, there's no such thing as an original idea, and that people who steal yet adapt are clever. And I'm like, oh, well,
I got
maybe.
that one too at uni, yeah.
Did
got
you?
That one too.
Yeah. See, it's a common one. So.
I really like, with Red Dwarf, just from first impressions, it strikes me as so comfy. It combines the comfiness of Star Trek. Star Trek is the most heartwarming, like nice, safe space place show to be, and then it combines it with the comfiness of like sitcoms or like British comedy, where you just feel so comfy all the time, even when everything's going to hell. Yeah. So it's just
that's a good summation.
Cozy.
I like that.
Cozy.
Yeah.
It's a nice cozy show.
And one thing we've said about it before is that. And this is a thing with British television, particularly as opposed to American television. In American television, they want their stars of their show to be almost perfect. They want them to be the people want to be. But there's a tendency in British shows to be more like people with flaws. These are people that, every single one of this crew are people that you go, oh, for one reason or another, Lister's got disgusting habits, Rimmer's a git, Cat is vain, Crichton is far too subservient to other people. They've all got these flaws, and nobody is the perfect dashing hero.
I'd go as far to say that all British comedy is primarily based on it's like get from work. Let's make shows about that complete piece of trash in real life. That's why all British comedy is so miserable. Just focus on the absolute worst of us, but the most worst mundane of us. And the fact that they've applied that to a sci-fi show, it just makes it all the funnier.
Yeah, and there was the Americans did try and do a remake, their own version of Red Dwarf. There is an American pilot that was made, and I've only ever seen clips of it. Me and Adam at some point are going to watch it in its entirety and react to it. But the clips I have seen, basically they turned Lister into a Han Solo dashing hero type person, who's got the very 90s swishy hair and charms all the ladies.
And no Scouse accent.
Yeah, he's an American accent, but and it just does not work. He needs to be the slob, and it's very strange watching.
That'd be funny for a gag, but for if that's the new, they've misunderstood the basics. It sounds like. Yeah.
So the next thing that happens in this episode is that Crichton has communicated with them, and he comes back in to where the others are, and immediately he's like very teary and very soppy towards Lister, and we know something is up with that. What did you guys think? What was going through your heads at that point? I knew what was going to happen because I'd seen it before, but you two hadn't. So what were you thinking might be up?
Feel free to kick it off, Sam.
No, I'm bouncing it back to you.
All right, that's fair. Well, obviously, nicely done. Well, in the last episode, like it literally ended as Phil said, like they've travelled a bit into the future, and Rimmer says, "Oh, we're just wondering what happened to Lister," and then the episode literally ends. So when Crichton comes back in crying, I'm like, okay, he's either in the future, he's either dead or like horrifically, maimed, altered in some way. So. And that turned out to be correct in
Pretty
some form.
spot
But
on, yeah.
I thought something was going to happen based on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everyone looks a bit different because they do come over. Oh, Sam,
They
what
do.
did you think? What did you think was going to happen? Did you pretty much?
I was
Same,
expecting like if you've seen the show Community, or I guess Rick and Morty even, I was expecting like an evil timeline version of them all. That's my basic.
I mean,
go-to
that
trope.
is kind of also correct in a way. They are much worse.
They are
We were
skewed,
just
yeah.
talking about how they are all characters with flaws and who are the gits from work, as it were. But they are so much worse in the future. I mean, they all come back in. Yeah, go on.
That is true. They're less responsible, but they're also less jaded. This group seem like friends. This group actually
is
have
true.
fun. This group do the sci-fi show that every other sci-fi show does. They do all those stuff. That group, they are Doctor Who,
Yeah.
which is really funny.
Yeah.
And and Red Dwarf crew don't get to be those guys, so of course they'd be the natural enemies. So it's clever.
Yeah, they all look very different. Rimmer's gotten fat, which quite how a hologram gets fat, I'm not entirely sure.
Or old.
Or old, or grow facial hair, or any of these things. I mean, imagine he could program himself to look like that, but it's
Don't know why he'd want to.
Yeah. Kat is also quite old and going bald. Crichton has a very interesting suit on and a toupee.
Yes.
And Lister's a brain in the jar.
Which looks exactly like the brain in the jar from Brain of Morbius, the
Yes.
Doctor Who story. I don't know if anyone else thought it. As soon as it appeared, yeah, but like the brain in the jar, like the liquid, the look of the brain, I was like, if they still had it at that point, they definitely went in the cupboard and said, "Look, there's our brain in a jar. Let's just use that." So
The episode just broke character, and we were like, Morbius?
Morbius? There you go.
Ectoplasm!
That's one for your broke canon series. You'd be like, Morbius crossed over into Red Dwarf.
Yes! Love it.
So
I feel like all the future versions themselves just look like the Comic-Con versions of the actors 20 years later when they all just start coming in. But at the same time, they're all just so much cooler than their original counterparts. Like,
Yeah.
they do the obvious joke of, "Oh, you're big now," but it's like our main cast are still the losers in the worst time. In the worst timeline.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, they go off and they live a life of luxury, but are they really cool? I mean, they're such condescending.
I mean, they do come in
arseholes.
they do come in with a swagger though. Like when they end, all of them, even though like Rimmer's a bit bigger and Kat's old or whatever, but they come in with like a sort of like domineering presence, I guess. Do you know what I mean? It's like they're not timid about meeting their past selves. If anything, they're like confident, and Sam, I sort of get what you mean. Yeah.
If I had to follow one group of them to continue the show, I think most people would pick them
Well, the future versions of them.
to get a more conventional
as they
sci-fi
go
show.
off and have dinner with dictators and the Hitlers.
Yes, I'm
Yes,
telling
the
you that's a
Hitlers.
fun Doctor Who variant.
Another reference to Hitler in this show. There's a lot of they like to come back to Hitler quite a lot, which I suppose he's a big figure in history. So, but he's featured in several episodes now as Hitler in one form or another. I mean, I took an instant dislike to this group of people. Like, I did not like them. They were condescending, smug, just general snobby attitude, and of course they like to dine with genocidal maniacs. So what is it he says about Hitler? He says something like, "Oh, you just got to avoid talking about politics, and it's fine."
It's their work. Avoid talking to them about their work.
That's it. Yeah. And as we learn, Hermann Goering is apparently, and I quote, a bit dodgy. So just a little bit, that just tiny bit. But
They're the party boys.
Yeah.
They're the
Yeah.
party boys.
The others are listening in, and they've managed to rig a system to listen into what's going on and see what's going on to all of this. And initially, when they're looking at like, who's who and stuff, I think Rimmer looks. First of all, Lister sees that he's a head in the jar, and he's just like, "Oh no." Rimmer looks and laughs, and Kat's like,
What? Is he fat?
Far from it. He's lost a bit of weight, actually.
That
Quite
is
a
the
lot of
most
weight.
Blackadder joke I've heard ever. I'm sorry, that just is the most Blackadder joke I can think of.
Absolutely. That they're here because they want to look at the time drive to get some copies of some components of it because theirs isn't working, and they can't face the prospect of not being able to time travel anymore because it's now they've gotten used to sampling the fine luxuries from across time and space. They've clearly solved the space issue, which the others were having. They can go to different times.
Maybe.
And there was a line about, if you coupled it with a faster than light drive, you could do it, but we don't have one. So clearly at some point in 15 years they find that. But the others aren't happy with all this, so they bazookoid their way out of the room and basically tell their future selves to get stuffed and get lost. Which
As you do.
yeah. Yeah. But then
Some more high ground for our sitcom characters. It's all too rare. It's all too rare.
They can't. They're with me. They can't stomach the idea that their future selves will be dining with Hitler. But the other ones aren't having any of this, and they start attacking and threatening and basically saying, "You don't."
The epitome of logic there. Let's attack our past selves and potentially kill them, because that's better than, what did they say, like living like rats. Or
It's
like
better
whatever he
than
says.
living in this show.
Yes.
Yeah, it's better than living like you
Essentially.
do.
Yes.
I love that it's ragging on itself, and even just from the first episode, it's self-deprecating.
Yeah. I had to laugh at first when this happened because Starbug's being attacked again, and another recurring thing we have in this show, Sam, is this little ship they're on, Starbug, is practically indestructible. It's crash landed I don't know how many times, the amount of times they've said, the systems are beyond repair, and then all of a sudden we're flying. Again, sci-fi comedy. I think last week they even were, what was it, when they crashed, they were like, the auto repair can fix most of this. I was like, wow, auto repair. There we go. So when they were getting attacked and being like, this is breached, that's breached, in my head I was like, it's fine, the auto repair will fix it.
We can't show the outside of the ship. We can't show it.
Yeah, we don't have the budget to do that. We don't know.
No.
But what I liked about it, so this is where Rimmer comes in with his character growth, because they're being threatened, they're saying they're going to blow him up, and usually this is the point where Rimmer would go, we surrender, because he does this all the time. They encounter a hostile force, and he's like communicates to them, and Red Dwarf to so-and-so, we are this, we completely surrender. And he's the one that wants to run away, he's the coward. But here he says, I say we fight, better dead than Smeg. And I was like, I gave a little mini cheer for him then, because I was like, yeah.
It's a great
Smeg
line.
is like their little like made up word that they use, like it basically insult that they use for each other, call each other Smeg heads, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's the language of the show.
Got it. It's
a
getting
great line as well.
Getting dangerously close to some weird imagery there.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I mean, he's called Rimmer. He's called Rimmer.
He is called Rimmer. I think I made this point on the very first episode, didn't I, Phil, about Smeg and all that. So it's like a rite of passage.
Smeg can also be short for something quite disgusting. But whether or not, I mean, the writers of this show claim that was a pure coincidence, that they came up with this as an insult and did not realise that there was a slightly longer word that could theoretically be shortened down to that.
It is a funny word. It's a very funny word.
Yeah. Good choice.
Yeah. So I was cheering for Rimmer there. I like the fact that he got that character growth and that he wasn't his usual coward self and ran away. So go Rimmer.
Oh yeah, man.
But of course they're massively outgunned, so they all start dying.
But for the 20 minutes I knew him, I was really, what? It was a massive turnout. I was like, yes, Rimmer.
Lister dies.
Cat
dies.
They all die.
And then Crichton is saying something very important that there may be a, and then dies.
Yeah.
And
It reminded me, this is such a deep cut, but when I was a kid, right, I loved some of the Jerry Anderson shows, like Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet, things like that. And we've said constantly, the model work on this show evokes Jerry Anderson so much. But this scene where they're all dying, there's a Captain Scarlet episode, and I apologize for the deep cut, where, they have like their bases in the clouds, right? They've got like a sky base, basically. Yeah. And for whatever reason, I can't remember why, but it's being attacked. And like one by one, all the different coloured members, because Captain Scarlet, Captain Blue, all that, they're all being picked off one by one on Cloud Base. They're all dying, and of course it's such a weird moment because like this is your standing set, like Red Dwarf is. This is the familiar space. It's the safe space, and then seeing the familiar characters die in that is really weird. Now in Captain Scarlet, it turns out it's all a dream, or it's it's not real basically. So when this was happening, I got that same feeling. It was really weird. I was like, this feels unnerving.
Every sitcom has a hub, and like even Doctor Who does. When the TARDIS gets invaded in the new series, at least. That's a big deal.
Yeah, man.
It's
So
very invasive.
it felt like that, and part of me thought in my head, I was like, well, this is a comedy. I was like, are we going to get the whole, not necessarily is it all a dream, but are we going to get some sort of punchline? Are they all going to be okay? So I was quite surprised about how this resolves in this episode, anyway. So
yeah, or doesn't resolve
or doesn't.
The case maybe. Because Rimmer, I think he's realised what Crichton is saying, because he sort of has this look of like realisation on his face. He goes, grabs the bazookoid, heads down to, presuming like the engine room.
Yeah,
and
he
fires
shoots
at a bit of equipment, which I think is meant to be the time drive. Although I don't think, but they've never shown us the time drive before this. So how we're meant to know this, I don't know. But I can only presume, just by logical sort of working out that deduction, that's the word I'm looking for, that it must be the time drive that he's shooting there.
And Starbug, after 6 series, has finally been destroyed.
Yeah, because I don't know if he shot the time drive before the ship was destroyed by a blast from the other ship. Who knows what came first? I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, not this again. Who shot first? Who shot first? Bloody hell. But yes, and then to be continued.
Is this our first to be continued? I think it might be.
I think it is, and I feel bad for that, like yourself, those who watched it at the time, because audiences had to wait
3 years. I had to wait for the next episode.
The real pain. I can hear the pain.
Yeah. Bear in mind, like up till this point, the series had been made like every year. So I guess back then, I know you said you joined on this series, Phil, but maybe for those who watched it series 1, this must have been, when they saw that, they thought, all right, same time next year then, and then it didn't happen, and it didn't happen again.
Yeah, I'd gotten into the show maybe about a year before, and maybe seen some of series 5 and series 6. I was like, new show, great, I love this sci-fi comedy show. To be continued. Oh, that's really exciting. What's going to happen? Keep waiting. And back then as well, without the internet and everything, I didn't have any information about when the next series was coming. So I was just like, where is it? Where? Like a year later, where is it? Another year later, it's still, where is it?
The miniature wilderness years.
Oh God, yeah. Is there a reason why the gap? Because I know we've mentioned before with this series, series 6, a lot of the scripts they said were rushed because it was a case of the BBC. BBC were like, "Hey, this show's doing well. We want more of this." After series 5, and I think the creative team were like, "Oh well, we either want like a break or some more time," and they were like, "No, you will make this show like now, like for us next year, yes." So,
yeah, it's really weird that the BBC went from doing that to from commissioning series 6 and going, no, we need it now, it's so good, like we want it really quickly after series 5, then going, and the next series after you've left a cliffhanger, don't worry about it.
I just wonder what the decision was for the gap. Like, was it the BBC? Was it the production team?
I don't know. I'll see if I can see anything on the trivia section of IMDb, but
I can see it must have been painful. At least when the classic series of Doctor Who ended, it wasn't, well, sort of was, but it wasn't on like such a to-be-continued cliffhanger. Like, there was sort of a closing of the book.
It was open-ended, but it felt
it wasn't to be continued.
No.
I can sense the childhood resentment still in your voice, Phil. I get it.
Still not over.
I had that with Futurama specifically.
Oh,
that was the show that was always ending. But as a kid and little internet usage, It may as well have been gone.
That's it, yeah. That show, didn't it get cancelled or like rumoured like 3 or 4 times or something? Or was it every series they were like, oh, it's good, this is it, this is the last one, and then they'd make another.
They did something really interesting. Rather than ever doing a hard cliffhanger like Red Dwarf has, they would do like soft endings for the show. They were like, if this is it, then this is a nice, cute, sweet ending to get on it. They always ended it with a nice, cute moment, and I just can't imagine that from this show at all.
Well, so we did have that. We had it once, Series 5, I'd argue, where they sort of got out of whatever the situation was. Do you remember, Phil? And they were like, right, onwards to wherever next. It was literally like that. Like Starbug flying away. Do you know what I mean? It was very soft in the sense like they'd escaped the danger and they were like, right, onwards to new adventures or whatever, and that was it. So I'd argue that was that's like a soft ending.
So I found out the reason why there was a big break, and it wasn't the BBC. The BBC wanted another series pretty much straight away. The hiatus was caused because up until this point, Sam, every episode was jointly written by 2 writers, Doug Naylor and Rob Grant, and this series marks the end of their writing partnership. So it says here the hiatus was caused by the end of the Grant-Naylor writing partnership and the Red Dwarf chaos that followed. So basically, they had a massive falling out, the writers, and eventually one of them returned, and then since then it's just been him, but I can't remember which one it is.
I think it's Grant. I think it's Rob. Is it Rob Grant or is it? I can't remember.
Yeah. And then they both went on to write novels. After this series finished, that's when they wrote the novels. But they both wrote like basically 2 different continuities of novels from this point onwards. So there are, which me and Adam are in the middle of reading the first one of those novels. So we will do an episode on that at some point.
Did you take one for each writer?
Not yet, no.
We should have done. That would have been interesting. Yeah.
And then you've got Adam over here being like, actually, no, he was really onto something. And feels like, no.
Yeah.
That'd be hilarious.
Yeah, so that's why. And then, so this was the end of the writing partnership between the 2, and that's why there was such a big gap.
Right. And I guess in a worst case scenario, they would have just remained dead. And their final thoughts being they had a little glimmer of hope, but then they died.
Like this could have been the last Red Dwarf episode ever, potentially.
That's what Hitchhikers did.
Potentially.
Hitchhikers, spoiler, kind of ends. Douglas Adams ended it with just going to kill my characters now.
Was that the last Douglas Adams written book?
That's mostly harmless, yeah.
Yeah.
It was so divisive.
And then, who was it? I can never pronounce it. The Welsh name that I can't pronounce.
Wow.
Sorry.
We're doing so well there.
Apologies to Wales.
Apologies to Wales.
Loads of people gave it a shot after, but especially that guy. Ian Colfer.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah. Redeemed with Wales.
Redeemed.
So that's the episode. We do a couple of regular features on the show where we pick out our favourite character and our funniest moments. So favourite characters first. What was Sam? What was your favourite character in the episode?
Rimmer just won me over from the opening scene. I have to be honest. That really set the tone really nice and quickly. And because Blackadder is my go-to English comedy I can think of, I love seeing stuff like that pop up.
There you
Brilliant.
go.
Adam?
Nice and swift. I'm going to give it to Crichton in this one. I love Robert Llewellyn anyway, but sort of like what you said, the material he's got is good and he just makes it even better, like the paint before assembly gag, the deep space 15th century gag, his reaction when he finds out the future, the whole thing with the onions in the kitchen.
It's his episode. It is totally his episode.
Yeah, and he's had a few of those, but he always, whenever he gets an episode, he always like excels with it. I don't think we've had one where I've gone like, oh yeah, that was a Crichton episode, but it was a bit of a dud from his end. He was so good. So yeah,
there was a run, wasn't there, where for about 4 episodes in a row, both of us picked Crichton for our favourite character for 4 episodes running because he just
had
so
the best lines. He had the best stuff. But what about you, Phil? Who won it for you this time?
I'm going for Rimmer as well. Slightly different reasons. Less so for the comedy, although the comedy was good, but just because of that and because I've been watching him throughout the whole series now, 6 series, just the character growth in this one episode, to the fact that I literally sort of punched the air almost when he was brave, first of all, and then when he goes to save the day by himself when everyone else is dead. I was like, yes, go Rimmer. So absolutely Rimmer, for that reason, is my favourite character.
Solid.
I'd like to change my answer to a future lister, the brain in the jar.
I did wonder if somebody was going to pick Brain in the Jar.
Yeah, I will. Morbius was my favourite character.
Morbius, yeah.
Absolutely.
Secretly Morbius.
and by the way, I have to say, thank you for bringing me on for the timey-wimey episode. I don't know whether that was intentional. But
was that intentional?
Not particularly, no. It was pure coincidence.
If this
Well, there you
cliffhanger
go.
doesn't resolve with a Moffat-style Big Bang Doctor Who, or we did something before we all died, and then timey-wimey reasons were all fine, I will be shocked, I tell you.
Well, Phil might remember the answer. I do not know the answer to that one, so yeah.
I mean, we
that'll
have
be
had
interesting.
several episodes now where the season has ended on a kind of it's never said to be continued, but something has happened, and then at the very beginning of the next episode, they've either completely ignored it, or they've given us at the beginning of
like
was it
one
series
line.
2?
Yeah.
Was it series 2 when we
Yeah,
got the scroll?
yeah.
They did a Star Wars style text scroll at the beginning of the episode that went by so fast that anybody in the 90s would not have been able to read it. We can only really read it now because we can
Was that
pause
part of
it.
the joke? Was that part of the
I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Okay,
But
I
it
take
also-
it completely back. They're going to skip over it for sure, right?
They absolutely probably, that was something they would do, because in this text scroll episode they basically said all of the things that happened at the end of the last episode, they happened, and they gave like a quick blurb like, oh yeah, and this is why we're never mentioning it again, because this also happened, and this also happened, and this also happened, and this is why Crichton looks different now, and this is why we've got a different Holly, and and all sorts of things like that. And it went by so fast that I swear nobody in the 90s would have been able to read it. It's only because we can pause it and still have a crystal clear screen now that we can see it.
Captain, we're stuck in sitcom purgatory. They totally are.
Given that, Adam, how do you think they're going to resolve this?
I mean, it literally could do anything. Maybe it's like a alternate like if it is the time drive that Rimmer shot, maybe it shoots them either into like an alternative dimension where they're alive, or it shoots them maybe a bit back in time before the explosion. But I don't know. Could be anything. Keeping an open mind on that one.
That last bit was quite intentional. I know we didn't know it was a time drive. I just learned that 10 minutes ago. But including that bit tells me that there might be some sort of solution.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the other regular feature we have, funniest moments. What was the thing that made you laugh the most, or you just found most funny in the episode, Sam?
Ooh, give me a second. Because I don't want to repeat one of the ones we've already said. That's the thing.
You can. That's fine. We do
Yeah,
that
you can,
sometimes.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
more than
we
welcome
do.
to.
The box found in a box was hilarious. But also, I mean, it wasn't a joke, but I just found it funny how most of Cat's lines in the episode were just talking about things he could smell and he kept talking about his nose.
Yeah.
And I know that's for plot reasons, but it's like, dude, what? Stop talking about your nose. Please. It's
Did you
weird.
get, as someone who's never seen an episode before, did you get that he's meant to be a future evolution of a cat? So the cat's domestic house cat. This is okay. So basically, Lister went into suspended animation for 3 million years. The rest of the crew died on the big ship, like massive. There were thousands of people on there, and because they used to have a bigger ship and they lost it, and he had a pet cat called Frankenstein who happened to be pregnant and didn't die in the radiation leak, and so went on to have descendants. And after 3 million years, the result of cat evolution is the cat that we have as a main character of this series.
So I'm going to say no, I didn't predict that.
Not all of that, but did you get the general gist that he's meant to be a cat? Like
not
a cat
really.
creature of some kind?
No, I thought he had good smell because he was a vampire.
It's
go.
the teeth, isn't it? It's the teeth.
I absolutely was convinced he was just a space vampire, and that was part of the joke, and it wasn't a sci-fi thing. Really? Oh my god.
No. Now that when you say space vampire, I'm like, I mean, yeah, for someone who like came completely fresh. I mean,
I thought he was just like a cartoonish vampire. It may as well have been like a Scooby-Doo mummy or something. I thought that was the joke. Okay, ignore me. But
no, it's fair.
I'd like to take back what I said at the beginning about this show having a mythos. I stand corrected.
as a little bit, tiny bit.
It has a mythos. It just is happy to completely ignore it when it's convenient.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not a consistent one, but that was quite a detailed, funny origin.
What was your funniest moment, Adam?
It's got to be the whole.
We're still where we were.
Of course, we're still in deep space, sir. Only now we're in deep space in the 15th century.
Just that reveal, like you said, Sam. It's a very obvious joke, but when done well like that, it really works. And yeah, I mean, the audience clapped, but I was laughing for quite a while. So yeah, that's got to be it for me, that gag. What about you, Phil?
Mine has to be Crichton's realization that Lister is not a robot. And just that dawning look on his face as he realizes, and it's basically like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Look on his face.
Yes.
That was it for me. That was the thing that got the biggest laugh.
Good choice.
What about marks out of 10? If you had, they used to be. They're not on the show anymore, so this is also not going to make sense to you. But when they were on the bigger ship, they used to have these little robot things that went around that were called scutters. So we mark out of 10 scutters on this show. So how many scutters out of 10 would you give this episode, Sam?
I guess I'm going to have to do it on first impressions the whole show, aren't I? I'll give it 7.5. 7.5
Nice.
scutters.
Nice.
It's the
That's
sort of
nice.
show I would definitely watch if it was on. But I'm not extending a BritBox trial to finish it. To be fair, that's a hard metric. I wouldn't extend my BritBox trial for any show. But no, I liked it a lot. I like the really blasé tone to it. This episode, and I have to assume all the episodes, just go through so many different ideas in just half an hour. That honestly, I have to wonder what's left for the other 6 seasons of episodes. Like, what are they all about? Because this did like so many core sci-fi ideas.
I mean, so
time.
far in our journey, like, with me being a newbie to it, I'd say out of 36 episodes so far, I think there's only been like 2 or 3, hasn't there? That I think I've considered like duds or ones I didn't enjoy. So yeah, like you're saying, for this show and its concept, that's quite impressive so far. Yeah.
What about
we've
you,
still
Adam?
got like 50 odd episodes more to go,
Yeah.
so we'll see how long that lasts. But for me, I've actually given it the same as Sam, 7.5. As I said at the beginning, it was sort of a bit up and down for me in terms of like the comedy. But again, that's subjective. I thought the stuff there were just points where it felt like not slow, but it just felt like a bit meandering, I suppose. Like it was just a lot of talking, which is fine in a sitcom. But but the last 10 minutes I really liked when the future guys come in. Obviously the to be continued is quite tantalizing, and I want to see how it resolves. So not the strongest series finale or strongest episode of Red Dwarf I think I've seen, but yeah, a solid 7.5 definitely.
If I can just quickly off that, if it's striving to be a series finale, like if it's trying to be dramatic, even just in that last 5 minutes, if it's trying to be, I think it flubs it a bit.
Yeah.
But I also don't believe that's what the show's true intentions are, so it's completely fine.
No, I don't think I don't. Yeah, I'd probably. Would you? It's probably not like what was like the core of their thinking. You know, like we need to make this a drama. Do you know?
Well,
like you say,
I kind of think of it as almost a send up of those overly dramatic. Oh my god, everyone's dying! I'm the last man standing. Type things.
It's very similar to the Borg episode, that huge iconic cliffhanger with Picard, right? Best of both worlds.
Yeah,
the really really big one. It seems like a play on that specifically to me.
I need to try and get into Star Trek.
No.
These references go right over my head. I know what the Borg
I'm
is.
that guy now for two different sci-fi shows.
We've all seen that clip, haven't we? Like
I
the
think
Borg
so,
and
yeah.
all that. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's a different show. What about you, Phil?
I'm going to give this slightly higher. I'm going to give it a... Oh, what am I going to give it? I'm teetering between 8.5 and 9.
Okay.
I really liked it. I am going to give it a 9. I'm going to give it a 9. I really liked it. And the thing that clinched it is the Rimmer stuff that made it him my favourite character as well, because I really liked that character moment for him. But overall, the episode had some really funny moments. It had some great sci-fi concepts. It didn't waste... I don't think it wasted any time. When it needed to move on, it moved on swiftly. And I love a timey-wimey story as well. I mean, we're all Doctor Who fans. We love timey-wimey stories. I'm going to give it a 9. Not my highest score, but quite high.
Still, it's pretty solid choice.
Yeah. If you're watching this on YouTube, do use the comments below to let us know what you thought of the episode and what you would have scored it as well. Give us your mark out of 10 as well. But that's it for another episode. Thank you for joining us, Sam.
Thank you for the invitation. Yeah.
Do promote whatever you've got to promote. Where can people find you on the internet and find your content, as people call it, and cringe?
I'm fine with content. I don't aspire to make anything more than content. So here's some schlop, you know? And you can find said schlop on the YouTube channel Davis, Davis. And if you just type in Doctor Who or Broke Canon, I'll come up in some form or another.
For those that don't know what Broke Canon is, give a brief summary of what Broke Canon is.
It's a massive send-up of people who pretend that lore and continuity is like really, really important and the basis of their enjoyment into the media. Because we all enjoy a bit of escapism. We all like playing with canon and getting into that stuff. But if you ever really go into it deep and dissect, hang on, none of this makes sense. There's a lot of fun to be had, and that's hopefully what I'm at.
Great series.
It is. It's very, very funny. Brilliant, thank you. Adam, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on YouTube at Adam Martyn with a Y. That's my half Welsh heritage coming out there. But I make videos on a variety of topics. Doctor Who, now that's what I call music, classic TV, idents, presentation, just whatever I'm interested in, quite frankly. It's done me all right so far, so you can go and check me out there. Also, give me a follow on Twitter at Adam Martyn AMTV for daily ramblings, musings, occasional giveaways. That's me. What about you, Phil?
So when you say Welsh heritage there, earlier on when we were basically insulting the Welsh by saying we couldn't pronounce anything, all your family that maybe listen to this at home are sitting there going, well, we don't like him anymore.
That's why I kept quiet.
I made it good with the Welsh bit by the end of it. I'm in the good books again.
You're in the good books. I've still got appeasements to make.
I think my surname's Welsh, you know.
Davis.
I need to get on that.
My family's from the West Country originally. My dad's family's from the West Country, so that's like almost Wales. It's very close.
Close.
It's very close.
Everywhere is almost Wales, really, when you think about it.
Almost.
Wales,
yeah.
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Philip Hawkins, talk about Doctor Who and other geeky pop culture, like this here podcast is on there, as well as all of the usual Apple Podcasts and podcasting places. You can listen to it there, where you can just look at some still drawn cartoons of me and Adam that Sophie drew. I can't speak. You can find me there, or on Twitter. I'll spell it for you because nobody can ever spell this if I say it. It's IUDEX_Phil, which is pronounced Udex. Don't ask. Thank you all for watching or listening or whatever you're doing, and we will be back for the beginning of Series 7 next week.
Good luck, boys. Good luck.
See you later.
Thank you. See you later.